Welcome to section 8.6, day 1. Factoring a quadratic trinomial of the form x squared plus bx plus c. That is our objective today, is to factor trinomials of this form. All right, the process of factoring is the reverse of FOILing. So we have x squared plus bx plus c. To factor this, we want to find two integers. We'll call them m and p, with a sum or difference of b. So you add or subtract those two numbers, you'll get the b in the middle, the number, and who multiply to c, or as a product of c. And if we find those two integers, m and p, we will rewrite our factored form will be x plus m, and then x plus p. And then m plus p equals b, so if we add them together, they'll equal that middle term, and mp, when multiplied, equals c. Now, you don't get confused when it says m plus p. It's just generic, so that middle term could be a negative number, so we could have some negative numbers being combined. So just be careful with that. Here's an example of how this works. We have n squared minus 9n plus 14. So a couple of things to notice is our last number, the c, is 14. So to get a positive number when you're multiplying two integers together, both of the numbers have to be either positive or they both have to be negative. Well, then we look at our middle term. Our middle term is a negative number. So if we want to add two positive numbers or two negatives together to get to a negative, our two numbers in this case have to be negative. So now we're going to look at the factors of 14. We're going to be looking for negative factors. And so what numbers multiply to 14? Well, we could have negative 1 and negative 14. They would multiply to a positive 14. But if we add them together, you get negative 15, which doesn't match the middle number. The other set of factors at work are negative 2 and negative 7. They multiply to a positive 14. And if you add them together, you do get negative 9. So the numbers we want to use for our two integers are negative 2 and negative 7. So then we're going to write them in our factored form, x minus 2 and x minus 7. That is my factored form. We find the numbers that multiply to c that will add up to b. That is the key for this when we have a leading coefficient of 1. So it's just an x squared term. There's not like a 2x squared or a 4x squared. When it's just x squared, we look for the numbers that multiply to the last term that will add up to the middle. And then we rewrite it in our factored form as two binomials. It does not matter which factor you put first. You could have x minus 7 times x minus 2. It's the same thing. It doesn't matter. So the order of these two factors doesn't matter. What matters is you find the right integers that will multiply to the c and add up to the b. So this first slide is just a way to practice to find the right numbers. So we're looking for numbers that multiply to negative 36 for the first problem that add up to negative 5. They're already giving us that we have negative 9 as one of our factors, and what negative 36 divided by negative 9 would be a positive 4. Because 4 times negative 9 is negative 36, and negative 9 plus 4 is negative 5. So next one we have y squared plus 3y minus 4. We're already given that y plus 4 is one of our factors. So the other factor is going to be a negative, because we have a negative last number, positive in the middle. And the number multiplied by 4 that'll give you negative 4 is negative 1. So we're looking for negative 1. Those are our two factors. 4 times negative 1 is negative 4. 4 plus a negative 1, or 4 minus 1, is 3. Then we have n squared minus 6n minus 40. We're already given that one of the factors is 4. And what multiplies by 4 to get negative 40? It would be negative 10. Because negative 10 times 4 is negative 40. Negative 10 plus 4 is negative 6. And that multiplies to c, adds to b. Now let's actually do some factoring from scratch. It says here, factor each expression, write in standard form before factoring if not given in standard form. Sometimes we will be given a trinomial that is not in standard form, and we will need to write it in standard form before we can do anything with it. Our first one, we have y squared plus 5y plus 6. It is in standard form. We have a positive as our last number, and we have a positive in the middle. The only way to get a positive number, of course, is to either multiply two positives together or two negatives. Since our middle term is positive, we will have two positive factors that will add up. We have two sets of factors that multiply to 6. We have 1 and 6 and 2 and 3. We want to find a group that's going to add up to 5 for the middle term, and that would be our 2 and our 3. So we have y plus 2 and y plus 3. We are factored. Here it also says to check your answer. So to check it, we are going to FOIL it back out or distribute, however you want to look at it. We're going to multiply these back together to make sure we get back to the original. So we take y times y, we get y squared. Y times 3, we get 3y. 2 times y, we get 2y. And 2 times 3, we get 6. So now we have y squared plus 5y plus 6. This is a quick way to check to make sure we did it right. So here's my factored form right here. And there is my check to make sure it works. For the next problem, you'll notice it is not in standard form. So we need to rewrite it in standard form. Remember, the highest degree to lowest. So we have q squared minus 12q plus 20. Now we've written standard form. Now we can factor it. We want to look at the numbers that will multiply to 20 that will add up to a negative 12. Since our last number is 20 and our middle number is negative, we want to get two factors that multiply to 20 that are negative numbers. Our numbers that multiply to 20 are 1 and 20, 2 and 10, 4 and 5. Remember, both of our factors in this case are going to be negative numbers. So what two numbers will add up to negative 12? It'll be negative 2 and negative 10. So our factors are q minus 2 and q minus 10. We're going to check it to make sure it works. So we're going to FOIL or distribute between the two, multiply them back together. And when you do, you get q times q is q squared. Q times negative 10 is negative 10q. Negative 2 times q is negative 2q. Negative 2 times negative 10 is positive 20. Combine our like terms, we get q squared minus 12q plus 20. This is my check to make sure what I did for factoring works. So here's my factors, q minus 2, q minus 10, and we checked the answer to make sure it worked, and it did. So for our last one, again, it's not in standard form, so we need to write it from highest degree to lowest. We get b squared minus 11b plus 24. Now we're looking for numbers that multiply to 24 that will add up to a negative 11. Like the one above, we need two numbers that are going to multiply to a positive 24 and add to a negative 11. Since our last term is positive, our middle term is negative, we need two negative factors. And the factors are 1 and 24, 2 and 12, 3 and 8, and 4 and 6. And you do not have to write this stuff out if you can see it right away. But if you don't see it, making these little factor charts will help you see what's going on. And 3 and 8 will add up to 11. If they're both negatives, they will be negative 11. So we have b minus 3 and b minus 8. We will then remultiply them out to check our answer. This is my factored form. So it just tells you to factor. That's as far as you have to go, is right there. Here we are checking. So b times b is b squared. B times negative 8 is negative 8b. Negative 3 times b is negative 3b. Negative 3 times negative 8 is a positive 24. Combine our like terms, and we get b squared minus 11b plus 24. Our check is good. All right, so this is factoring when our leading coefficient is 1. All right, I'm going to do the first one, and I'll have you guys do the last two. So we have d squared minus 4d minus 12. We're looking for the factors of negative 12 that will add up to negative 4. Since our last number is negative, that means we have to have both a positive and a negative number for our factors, because the only way you can have two numbers multiplied together to get negative is to have a positive times a negative. So keep that in mind. Our factors that we could have are 1 and 12, 2 and 6, 3 and 4. Now remember, we could have, one of these has to be positive and one has to be negative. But if we did 1 plus 12, we'd get 13. If we did 1 minus 12, we'd get negative 11. So that one's not going to work. If we have 2 and 6, we could have 2 plus 6, which is 8. We could have 2 minus 6, which is negative 4. If we did the other way, you did 6 minus 2, you would have a positive 4. But we want the 2 with a negative 6. Those two will multiply to negative 12. And when added, we'll add up to negative 4. So our factors are d minus 6 and d plus 2. That is my factored form. To check it, we would multiply d times d and get d squared. D times 2, which is 2d. Negative 6 times d, which is negative 6d. Negative 6 times 2, which is negative 12. Combine our like terms, and we get this. This is my check. This is my factored form. I want you guys to try number 2 and number 3. So pause your video, try them, and see if you get the same answer that I get. First, we need to put this in standard form. So we have to write it as n squared plus 2n minus 63. We are then looking for factors of negative 63 that add to 2. Again, we need a positive and a negative factor. So we have factors of 1 and 63, 3 and 21, and 7 and 9. The only one that's going to work for us is 7 and 9. And to get a positive 2 in the middle, we have to have a negative 7 and a positive 9. So we factor this out, we get n minus 7 and n plus 9. And we will do the check on this one. N times n is n squared. N times 9 is 9n. Negative 7 times n is negative 7n. And negative 7 times 9 is negative 63. And we get n squared plus 2n minus 63. That's my check. Here's my answer. The last one's already in standard form. We have a negative 8 and a 2. So we want to look for factors of 8. We have opposite factors again. We're going to have a positive and a negative factor. The factors of 8 are 1 and 8, 2 and 4. We need to have a positive factor and a negative factor. We want to get to a positive 2. Our larger factor will be positive. And the ones that work are negative 2 and positive 4. So we should get w minus 2 and w plus 4. And then we will multiply them together to see if it worked, if we have the right factors. And w times w is w squared. W times 4 is 4w. W times, or negative 2 times w is negative 2w. And negative 2 times 4 is negative 8. And when you combine, you get w squared plus 2w minus 8. And that's what we started with, so our check is good. And this is my factored form. All right, that is factoring with the leading coefficient of 1. That was all for section 8.6 day 1. I do want you to check answers 2, 3, and 4 when you do it. Get some more practice of doing the FOIL method. Tomorrow we go on to when we have the leading coefficient is not 1. We'll learn how to do that tomorrow. Thank you for watching and have a nice day.